going to do the Old Testament world.
Okay.
And it's actually a very interesting subject. I put a little bit of effort in to try and get the pictures, because all the pictures is not in the book.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting if you start looking at the background of the Old Testament.
Okay.
Okay, so in the Old Testament we have to look at the social customs, the economic side, the political and the military history.
Oh, yeah.
Because we don't have the technology, they didn't have this, so they can just pass it on.
Yeah.
So what did they do? Everything was new for them. So it's quite interesting to see how they work and what they do. There are 4 areas. Israel, Israel's political history we look at. Israel's social customs and cultural environmental side. You know, what happened, what is different in the meantime, what for that time something can mean something, and today will mean totally something else. For instance, we can have cultural things like, I'm going to use it for example. For some of our cultures, so if I say, don't be stupid man, come in, we'll take it as a very big insult. If you say that. Now, for instance, in our Afrikaans speaking people, you say, moenie stupid wees nie man. That is just a saying. It doesn't affect us. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The same, there's quite a few that in the other culture it is actually an insult, where in this culture maybe it's not an insult, it's just a way of speech, a manner of speech. So we must look at this because there's a lot of different cultures between them. Okay, so we have to look at that also. The geographical situation, the international relations, well, things like the military and political activities and moral and religious influences that came into everything in the biblical time. And then why the Old Testament actually gives us the reason why God worked with the Israelites the way He did. Why did He sometimes just go this way and this way? The Israelites didn't listen and He pulled them back again. And at the end He decided, okay, He's going to scatter them over the world. That was His, and then He looked at the Gentiles. Okay, so that is all going to come through, but that we can only learn from if we look at the archaeological things that we found, okay, that was digged up. The Bible is the oldest written record of history in the whole world forever. It's the only book that came through all the time. That gives us the knowledge of Israel, the complete history of the mankind since creation, and it starts with creation, but it goes through quite a lot of history in 11 chapters. So it's not given in depth. What's given there for us is for us to know what is going on with Israel and how all God worked. He didn't go in on all little things and so on. It's just the knowledge that we need to know God that He put into the Bible, that He actually got the people to write. Okay, then there's supplementary things by older sources for information. So they got some, say for instance, they got a parchment digged up, and that information is also old, but something in that thing, what they say is actually confirming for what is said in the Bible from another source. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not only Bible stuff, they got other stuff that they dig up, and that other stuff confirm what the Bible says. With other words, it is a normal social history through the life confirming biblical history. Okay, what happened? Then the material they left behind of ancient cultures. Let's see. The material remains, including all tangible things, such as writings on stone, metal, clay, parchments, and papyrus. All the things they wrote on. It's actually interesting to think of metal and clay and all of that. Today, if we must write on clay, we're going to have a problem to get everything finished. Okay? And to complete our work. Then they also had, as well as unwritten documents. Oops, there we go, a bit too far. Unwritten documents. Fortifications. Buildings, sculptures, household vessels, tools, weapons, and personal ornaments that they found. Like the buckets, you know, the the things that they had, all the park castles that they got, what was in the castles, the libraries that we're going to talk about that they found and everything. So let's look at Abram. The area, let me first start, the area Mesopotamia is where the most of the biblical stuff is come from. Okay, so that area is quite an important area for us even today. And later on, I don't know if I'm going to get there today, but we've got the map to see that it's all in the same area. They have Iran and Arabia, all that total area, Israel, that is where everything happened. Also, that we're also going to look at. So, Abram was called from Mesopotamia to Haran, and then to Canaan during the late 3rd and early 2nd millennium before Christ. Then he visited Egypt briefly before settling down in Canaan. His contacts alone involved 4 major cultures. So, in other words, Abram had already in him all the 4 major cultures that he was mixed with. So, our cultures here, that we are 13 different cultures in South Africa, we must be able to work with that. We must be able to work together. If they could do it in God's name, we can also do it. The same with the apostles in the New Testament. So we must be able to work together. We are all one. Okay? So yes, very interesting. David, now listen very carefully. David, almost 1,000 years passed before David organized the descendants of Abraham into a nation. That means there was not the nation Jews. It wasn't there. That was not there yet. And that was actually came after 1,000 years before Christ. And the Jews was actually first called Jews. They were Hebrew-speaking people. Okay? So, to note there that David, almost 1,000 years passed before David organized the descendants of Abraham into a nation. Okay? So there wasn't a nation to say this is Abraham's nation yet. He only organized it then. So it's quite interesting to think, to think about it that, say for instance, the Afrikaners, we are a very young nation. Jan van Riebeeck came here. And we are actually a very young culture. We are a very young culture. But the cultures was here, the Zulus was here, the Xhosas were here, the Strandlopers was here. Those cultures is much older than what our culture is. Our culture came from other places coming in and mix it with this part and this. You understand? Yes. So that is most probably, or most of the time, what happened here with David when he started there. David started getting this lot together to have one focus. Okay. So if you just think about it, that could have been any color person, any color, could have been from any color. So we can't just say it was whites or blacks or coloreds or Indians or whatever the case may be. We cannot say it because we don't know. It could have been anything because it came from a big background. Cultures David encountered included Philistines, Amalekites, Jebusites, what names? Moabites, Amorites, Armenians, and Edomites. Now let's see a bit. In this time that they did the archaeology, they found the palace of David. Isn't that fantastic? There's some photos. That was the palace of David, and this was just the dig where they digged up some stuff of the palace itself. Then we've got here at the bottom the drawing by Meiser work. There's just a reference there. That is what they think the palace more or less looked like. So it must have been a big place and a beautiful place. Okay, so they found the framework of the palace they found. So, it leading Israel to become a world power with territory extension from Egypt to the Euphrates. David was required to relate politically to the world empires of his day. So, now instead of we trying to get equal with other places, we fight to take it over. What is happening at the moment? Russia is fighting Ukraine for a piece of land. What's it now? Iran is fighting Israel. Fighting about ground. Now just totally off the topic.
Yeah.
Whose ground is it in actual fact? The whole world
Yeah.
belongs to God. But we're fighting about it. It's, it's just, we can work together, but it started already right in the beginning about that, right at the beginning. So Solomon had some culture and commercial contact with the Phoenicians and in northwest Palestine. After the northern and southern kingdoms divided, Assyrian power began to develop and challenge the existence of Israel. As we know, Satan is attacking God's people, so he will do anything to get Israel. And Israel fell in Assyrians' hands, and Judah was brought under Assyrian influence. So now we see what happened here. The Assyrians began to develop their power over Israel. So the Assyrians and Judah fell at the Assyrians, so automatically some other culture came in. Something else came in. It's not pure anymore, something else came in. The Jews eventually fell into the hands of Babylonians. Later influence come from the Persians, Greeks and Romans. So what happened here? If we look at David and Abram and David, they're going on, and all these other cultures and other things of pagan gods and all come in. They're going to be mixed up, don't you think so? That's going to be a great mix. That's going to be a great mix. So that is how the Israelites later were influenced. Okay? The archaeology findings give knowledge of the life of the Israelites in Mesopotamia, Asia, Syria, Palestine and Egypt. It gives settings which Abraham, Jacob and Moses lived in. Now that is very interesting. Okay. The archaeology findings tells us of the beliefs in Mesopotamia, their beliefs, people coming from Abraham's side, okay, or would I say people from whom Abraham came, not the other way around. Abraham came from the Mesopotamia area, but he came from another nation, and that is what happened then, where he came from. So what was their background when he came onto the show, if I can say it like that. Of the Egyptians, among the descendants of Jacob, Soyun, with other words, they're going to, what's going on with the Egyptians, and from there, Jacob came. So we got now, Abraham coming is in Mesopotamia, and Jacob is coming from the Egyptians. And then, of the Canaanites and Philistines, when the Israelites fought among whom they settled. So they fought them and they settled between them. Now you must know there's already 3 different groups that intervened into this one group of people. So what is going on there? You understand? This almost like we can say today in our culture. We've got a different cultures and they intermarry. And the different cultures is coming in. The one culture is in this, and the other culture is going into this group. So what do we get at the one culture is coming all into it? So, I don't know how many years, it will be one culture. Because they are intermingling all the way.
Yeah.
You see?
Mixed, yeah.
So that's one culture at the end. God ordained that Israel would be related to other nations, since his divine purpose was for Israel to be the missionary to the nations in Acts 13:46 to 49. So what was the original instruction for the Israelites? They were supposed to prophesy God's word and to tell the people and Gentiles about God. Did they do it? Because God went away from them and Jesus came down to us. And who's doing the work now? Us, the Gentiles. And we are trying to best now, but we are also trying at the same time to get the Jews back. That's why we get the Messianic Jews. Okay? So what actually happened is God just shifted his plan from the Jews coming back to the Gentiles. Okay? But we know that the Jews is still God's people.
Yeah.
God's chosen nation. So, Let's see. In Acts 13:46 to 49, what stands there? Then Paul and Barnabas waxed bold, that's the old King James Version, and said, it was necessary that the word of God should first have been spoken to you. But seeing ye put it from you, and judge yourselves unworthy of every everlasting life, lo, we turn to the Gentiles. That was now the apostles. They didn't want to listen to the Jews. As you know, Jesus told them then, go to the Gentiles. Go, so hath the Lord commanded us, saying, I have set thee to be a light of the Gentiles, that thou shouldest be for salvation unto the ends of the earth. And when the Gentiles heard this, they were glad and glorified the word of the Lord. And as many as were ordained to eternal life believed, and the word of the Lord was published throughout all the regions. Now, isn't it fantastic that that is still running?
Yeah.
And that was already, that was for Paul, so that was just after Christ. Okay, so because John was the oldest apostle living, and he was here in the 90s, more or less, they reckon. So it's more or less, so it's supposed to be earlier before that. Just after Christ's death, it was there. So, let's go on. Archaeological findings. While digging in a rubbish heap, the woman, Egyptian woman from Tel Amra in 1887, found 300 clay tablets that contained the Babylonian cuneiform script. The clay tablets contained the correspondence about 1410 to 1360 before Christ. Now you see, it's quite long back, eh?
Yeah.
And they got the work, they got them. They found the clay tablets. Isn't it fantastic? Like I see, wow, this was written that time. I think that must be fantastic to find something like that. The clay tablets often spoke about the vassal princes and governors of Syria and Palestine to the Pharaoh about the time of Israel's deliverance from Egypt bondage. They dealt with various political, military and economic problems and are considered to rank first among archaeological finds which bears on the history of the biblical lands in the latter half of the second millennium before Christ. These tables include letters from kings of Babylon, Assyria, Mitanni and Hittites. There are letters from the vassal princes of Amorites and from Bablos, Sidon, Tyre in Jerusalem. Letters from the Palestine cities of Hazer, Megiddo, Gezer and Lachish were also found. The letters revealed that 4 major powers, in addition to Egypt, existed at the time, namely the Mitanni or Hurrian kingdom, the Hittite kingdom, the Assyrian kingdom, and the Kushite dynasty in Babylon. Don't worry to follow me in the book. You won't be, I'm not...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. Rather listen. When you go home and you read through the book, you will find this. Okay. You're going to struggle to follow where I am in the book. Okay. So rather, and I've got pictures in that's not in there that we discuss extra. And later on, I will put in stuff that's not even in the book.
Oh.
Okay. So I'm giving a little bit different.
All right.
Okay. Okay. About 1450 before Christ, Egypt had extended their control northward to the Euphrates. Now, the Euphrates, if you look there, they're coming like that and they're going into one. So the Euphrates is on the left-hand side, is coming through. So northward to the Euphrates. During the Amarna period, Egypt held on its northern empire, had weakened, and the Arma correspondence gives an account of the gradual loss of the area. The Arma correspondence, how did they find it out? The things they digged up. The findings of the archaeology. Isn't it fantastic? Otherwise, they wouldn't have known it.
Yeah.
Okay, but because this is history, isn't there anymore. The letter maintains a Hamberu, who had been associated with the Hebrews by some scholars, they apparently did not own land, and often served as soldiers and agricultural laborers in exchange for maintenance. So where did it come that we work today? is exactly there, and that was already long before Christ.
Yeah.
There they said that the apparently did not own land and often served as soldiers and agricultural laborers in exchange for maintenance. And that is where we're still working. We don't, all of us doesn't have land to do what they did. Okay? So we do exactly the same, we get paid for our work. Don't go out so fast. Okay. These findings give them more clarity on proof of the biblical history. Then we get, you most probably heard about the Rosetta Stone. That is not a biblical thing, but it was also something they found that can give you more evidence what happened in that time. Okay, it's not a biblical stone with Bible, but the history is on there. So you know the background of that. Rosetta. Since Greece was known, the parallel hieroglyphic and Domitic script could be deciphered. Okay, that we said it. The Amarta tablets, the ones that I just spoke about.
Taking it out.
Yeah, there they are. That is that little. So the big one here was the lot that they found, and this is just a few of them. But that is the whole Tel al-Mari thing that they found with a few tablets. The pyramids, quite interesting. Did you know that the Giza and the Great Pyramids were already standing when the Israelites were in Egypt bondage? It's long back, eh?
Long.
It's long back. It's long before Christ. And you never think, you hear about the pyramids, you hear about, but you don't know actually how old they are. Now you can think to yourself, wow, they are old. That's why we don't know anything.
Yes.
So, the avenue located near Memphis led up to the temple of the Osiris Apis. The temple had disappeared, but 141 sphinxes were discovered together with a large number of subterranean vaults, in which the bodies of Apis bulls, regarded as a successive incarnation of the god Osiris, were buried. This tombs contains paintings and furniture, along with library texts on stone and papyrus, and had added to our knowledge of Egypt religion and its influence of the Israelite slaves. Now you can see what is happening. Now you can understand why the Israelites totally went dear Makar, you know. And now you can think to yourself, that stuff is so old, but it's actually, if you look at it, the bull and everything, that is the god. I can show you, let's first see at the top. That is the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Great Phoenix. That one is the Great Phoenix. And then the bull that was there, so-called fantastic bull, there's the bull.
Okay.
Okay, that's the bull. We just go a little bit up. That's the bull. Okay. That's the Apis bull there, but buried, and they. Now remember when they went out of Egypt, went out of bondage, they also had the bull. That and when Moses went up to the hill, that's the bull. That's coming from the pagan side. There's the Osiris Apis, the statue of their god. Okay, so if we look at it, you can see that the cultures of the other gods, the other cultures, actually was pagan gods. And that is where they got the bull from. The bull was when they were there, they know, okay, that bull. And that god, you know, that is where they got it. The Apis bull. Ramses contained the temple of Ramses II. That was about 1290 to 1224 before Christ. Who some scholars have identified as the pharaoh of the oppression. Now we talking about oppression a lot these days. See how far is that back? For the pharaoh of oppression. That is where the different stuff comes from, and we're struggling today still with it. And we know that is wrong. We know it's wrong. It's not biblical. The stela of his successor Merneptah, about 1224 to 1260 before Christ, was found, which mentions among his victories that Israel was desolated, the seed was not, and Palestine had become a defenseless widow of Egypt. So, where are they? Israelites was desolated. Her seed was not. She was not fantastic in the God stuff anymore. Her seed was not pure anymore. There you can see that is the temple of the Ramses II. Maar Nefta, the stele they found, it tells you everything. What's going on there. And then we're going back to Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is all still in that great area there on top of Africa on that side up. Okay, so that is quite everything happened around that one. But if you just think of it, how many laborers did they have to cut a thing out of stone like this?
So that's
You know, that is out of stone. Okay.
beautiful.
It's a lot of work. Okay, so Mesopotamia, the word Mesopotamia means between the rivers. So we know now that it's between the Euphrates and the Tigris.
Okay.
That is where the two is. That is why the name Mesopotamia is between the two rivers. That's the area between the two rivers. And the first land between Tigris and the Euphrates rivers is modern Iraq.
Okay.
Okay, the modern Iraq. The borders of Mesopotamia changed at various times and extended eastwards into Elam and Media, northwards what is now Turkish territory, and southwards into Canaan and Egypt. One of the earliest civilizations was developed in the area by the Sumerians, who existed in Mesopotamia before 300 before Christ. Now we come from thousands, quite closer to Christ already. So it's quite a few thousand. More or less, the earth is more or less by that time 3,700 years old by that time already, but we're closer to Christ now. The Sumerians were succeeded by the Akkadians, a group of Semitic people and northern Mesopotamia who gained control of the country and established a Semitic dynasty under Sargon the Great about 2,300 before Christ. That is going back again. Eh? The Amorites, I think that must be 3,000, not 300. Eh? I think there must be a zero with. Where is that now? Here, I think it's not 3,000 or 300. It must be 3,000. I'm sorry. That must be 3,000. Okay. Let's fix it. Okay. So, the Amorites invaded the land between 2000 and 1700 before Christ and established a dynasty which reached from the Mediterranean to Babylonia. This period was known as the Mary Age because the 18th century archives found at the city of Mary, or Mari, if you want to say it like that. New Babylon empires were established in the area during the divided kingdom of Israel. Now again, saying if they didn't find those places, we wouldn't have known it.
Yeah, it's true.
Now in this picture you can see that is the Euphrates and that is the Tigris. Okay? That's the two rivers coming up there. Okay. Now, Nippur is also in Mesopotamia. That is the map is ancient Mesopotamia. It looks a little bit different now. That is the old map, what it looks like. Now we're coming to the place Nippur. It's also a place in Mesopotamia. They've got a little few places they're going to discuss in the book. Over 30,000 tablets, there's a lot were found. There's a lot. In the temple library, they found over 20,000 tablets dating back to the 3rd millennium before Christ. They contain, before we talk what they contain, just to think, they also had a library. And all these tablets was in there. So they kept it. So it's quite a lot of writings and stuff that's in there. So these writings contain a list of rulers going back to the mythical and semi-mythical time. These tablets include the Epic of Gilgamesh. That is quite an interesting one. These tablets include an Epic of Gilgamesh, which include the oldest account of the flood. But that is, now Gilgamesh is not a biblical thing. That is a pagan thing what they believe. So it's not the same as ours. Okay? They got the whole story about it. You can actually, when you read your book, you will see what they say about it. But it's a pagan view of their gods, not our God. Okay? But it's come to the same thing, there was a flood. Okay? Come to the same thing, but they got another view of what happened there. Now that was found in the Gilgamesh, where they found it there, they read it, and that is how they found about that. The Sumerian deluge story was found also in a modified form in the recovery library of Ashurbanipal of the 7th century before Christ. Their flood story goes like this. The gods headed by Anu and Enlil has resolved to destroy mankind. According to the Sumerian account, the high was Ziusudra, who appeared before the council of the gods and protested the destruction of mankind, and the ark was built. That is what they've got on that thing. Okay, there's the story. Okay, now in Nippur they found this. That is in Nippur, that is where it is. That was the Epic of Gilgamesh, but I tell you there, story of the flood. That is where it was written on. That's the thing they found.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they found. That is Shushan, the palace. Shushan, the palace, that's also mentioned in Esther 1, verse 2. Then we spoke about their gods. Okay, that was the god Anu. That is what they looked like. That was the god Enlil. And this is the story of Ziusudra.
Okay.
So just the thing to use that as gods. I don't want them as gods, but anyway, that is just shows you the difference between cultures.
Yeah.
How they can totally believe things that you think to yourself, listen, these people are like actually crazy believing things like that, but it's still happening.
Yeah.
The Hindus believe in animals and stuff. That's their gods. It's still happening. So it's actually shocking that the people didn't come to realize, listen, there's something wrong. But yeah, it's going on still. Okay, Susa, these laws was on Hammurabi, and on the top panel of the stone, it depicts a king who is standing to receive the laws of the seated god. Now, if you later on, I've got also a thing like that, other picture. But this is the king, and that is the god. Get the laws from. That is what the picture shows there. So yeah, Babylonian, the great Zagharat. Its foundation tablet shows that it had been built by the king about, that was also the 3000 and not 300. 3000, where am I now? Double. There. Its foundation tablet showed that it had been built by a king about 3000 before Christ. It was rebuilt twice. The second time about 1250 before Christ. A cemetery nearby revealed pottery of an earlier period, a bodily evidence of a flood. So I could see there was something wrong. So there's evidence there was a flood. Flint object, clay figurines and pottery made a pre-Sumerian settlers at Ur revealed a high vulture at any early date. So it's going back. Above this level, archaeologists found a layer of silt from 3 to 11 feet thick. So it's quite big.
Yeah.
And C.L. Woolley interpreted it to be evidence of the flood of Genesis 6 through. So there is, because of that, archaeological vessels, they found there is stuff on top of it. They could see, okay, here something happened. The bodies, something happened here. And that's, now later on, that's going to be explained.
Okay.
Chapter, I think it's in chapter 2, they explain that. What happened to cause that slit and things. This is the palace. This one is a palace with Isra, with the Isra gate.
Okay.
You can't actually see it. Can you see it there?
Yeah, I can
Isra
see.
gate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks like
Okay. This is a great Zagharat of the Isra gate. This is the god Marduk and the temple of Marduk. That is where they went and prayed to him and whatever. Okay? So that is everything to do with Marduk. That is the temple. That's the great Zagharat. So that is where they are also got the famous, must be seen here, the famous hanging gardens of Babylon. It's also in here, in the city with the great Zagrat, or the Temple of Marduk. Okay, there's a hanging garden. Here you got it. Hanging gardens. The Baden guy actually tried to draw it for us to see what it looked like more or less. It must have been a beautiful place. Now in the corner there you can see that was where the hanging gardens was. So yeah, that was a big place and it was actually a beautiful place. But yeah, that for a false god. At the home of Abram, we're coming back to Abram now again. The standard was of earth. The standard of earth is a wooden panel was found in one of the tombs. Okay. The inlaid mosaic on the one side depicts scenes of war in which a representative of the king dismounts from his chariot and is led by soldiers to a group of naked captives whose arms are tied behind their backs. Now, just to think that they was actually so cruel that the captives was naked and they walked like that. It's actually very cruel. It's worse than as our world at the moment. They don't, as far as I know, they don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
The second row of the standard depicts, I'm going to show you just how it is, depicts the royal army advancing. The warriors are clothed in long cloaks and copper helmets and are armed with axes. A third row depicts chariots of javelin throws and quarters of the enemy stream on the ground. And then the backside of the panel portrays the scene of peace in which the king and his family are attending a banquet. Musicians play the instruments and the servants bring food. Apparently, it's seen as a victorious feast. Where is that one? There. This is what I described now to you.
Oh, okay.
All the different stages and the feast and the naked people captured and so on. That is what they found. That is what I described to you just now. Okay, then in the third dynasty of Ur, about 2060 to 1950 before Christ, it was found also in Ur-Mammu. The king ruled about the time of Abram. He rebuilt the walls of Ur, its Zagrat, palace, and numerous public buildings. Now remember, that's in Abram's time, hey? It's in Abram's time. That. The Zagrat is described as the stela of Ur-Mammu. The stela depicts the king in the attitude of prayer with flying angels carrying vases from which water is flowing. The king is thanking his God for the gift of water. Okay, his God. Another one of the king stands before the moon goddess Nangal and the god Nana to receive orders from the building of the Zagrat. Now come we look a bit on this. Now unfortunately these pictures is not in your books, but it's quite interesting to look at it, that they found it, that is there. Okay? That's the place, Tel Obeid. This is the place. This is the bull that I told you about again, the bronze bull they got. That's the copper little at Tel Obeid that I also found. That is what we described just now, the stand of Ur. The third dynasty of Ur, that is more or less where they got it. They found it. Okay? Excavated. And that is the stela of the Ur-Mammu. Now, if you look at this, you can see the god and the people here, and the leather, and everything that they explained is there. Okay, the leather and so on. There is your god, moon goddess Nindal. That is a god Nana. And that is the Paper Nineveh describing the flood. Okay, that's the other one that they found. Okay. There, the king and the goddess Ningal. Now, the one that said you're going to get it just now, the one that was on top, that is actually what's happening here. Okay, that is that. Okay, this is the king and the goddess Ningal and the building of the temple. This is all the descriptions that I gave, as in pictures. That is what it means. That is pictures. And that is the remains of a palace in Sennacherib, the remain of that palace. So, what does it tell us? The things of the Bible is confirmed by physical things in the world. So, it's not just thinking and history and, what would I say, physics, or myths is actually a word. It's not only myths that is. No, the Bible is not a myth because it's proven
Yeah.
with out of biblical things. They dug it up, they got it, and it proved the Bible that is true. Yeah. Now, the black obelisk of Shalmaneser II was in the period 859 to 824 before Christ, found in Kala. That depicts Jehu of Israel, alone with other subjects princes, bowing before Shalmaneser while bringing tribute. Under the representation of Jehu are the words tribute to Jehu, the son of Omri. So again, it's not our God. That is all that influenced the people. That is the pagan gods that come in bits by bits into Israel, the nation.
Okay.
Shalmaneser succeeded in bringing the coalition into submission in 841 before Christ and acquired King Jehu of Israel, 852 to 815 before Christ. Along with the defeated kings, it brings tribute. It shows that the Hazael-Yahu coalition was attacked by the Assyrians with a disastrous result of Syria and Israel about 840 to 838 before Christ. Okay, that was the black obelisk of Shalmaneser III that they found. There's also pictures in it and things you can see. There's stuff here in the rolls how they work. All the pictures is in there, carved out. Just think again, all that little stuff is carved out in stone.
Yeah.
It's really a lot of work. We look at Nineveh. Oops, I want to fill. Remains of the palace of Sedeka, 705 to 681 before Christ, and Ashurbanipal, 669 to 624 before Christ, has been uncovered. In Genesis 10 verse 11, Ashur founded the city of Nineveh. Sennacherib made it the capital of Assyrian Empire. We read about it in 2 Kings 19 verse 36. We read about that. Lion hunt reliefs. Now this is how they hunted the lions. Lion hunt reliefs, colossal bulls and enormous clay dappers with cuneiform characters were uncovered. The temple of Nebu and the royal library of Ashurbanipal were uncovered. It contains the Gilgamesh epic. Again, we say the same thing, the Gilgamesh epic, which contains also allusion to the creation. The writings glorify the local god Marduk of Babylon, Esher of Kala, and Enlil or Bel of Nippur. Can we look what they got here? There's the lion. That's where you can see they hunt lions. That is pijlenboor, you call it, or swords or something. You can see it's stuck in it. So it's most probably swords or something. There also they're killing them, killing the lions. That was the bull. There was also there. You see the bull. It's half a man, half bull. The colossal bull. You see half man, half bull. Okay. And this was the remains of the palace of Ashurbanipal, those. And that was the royal library. That is what the library looked like.
Okay.
That I found. Okay. So now you can actually start seeing what's happening. The pictures is coming in. It's not only history. You can put in something. You can see what's happening. There's the tablets in the museum. The tablets that I found in that library. That is in the museum of Ashurbanipal, the museum of the library. That is all the stuff that just put it down in the museum. We've got it nice in the museum back. That is the temple of Nebu. That is the Gilgamesh epic that we spoke about earlier. And we've got there also the god of Ashur of Kala. That was the presentation there. The god of the same one we had on top, the god of the Enlil, and the god of Bel. That's the other one. Okay. We look at another city in Mesopotamia. This is Mary. The city was exposed to many cultures. Archaeological finds at the site include the remains of 4 temples of the goddess Ishtar. 4 temples. A ziggurat, a temple tower with an adjoining sanctuary dedicated to the divine king of the land. A large palace containing almost 300 rooms and a covering about 15 acres. Yeah, and to think that is all out of rocket stuff.
Mm.
The palace had 300 rooms and covering about 15 acres. In the palace they found 20,000 clay tablets which included correspondence between the lost king of Mari and Hammurabi, the founder of the Babylonian Empire. They were written in Akkadian. The text mentions a tribe of Benjaminites. Now if you really go into the Benjaminites, if you really go into the history of the Jews, it's not only a Jew group. There's like the Christian churches. There's such a lot of Christian churches. Some of them totally off the way, and some of them quite closer to the truth. The same with the Jews. Now, if you go into the history, they reckon that Jesus came from the Benjamites. Okay, from that side. But yeah, Jewish, but from the Benjamin side. That is what they reckon. Right. The city was exposed to many cultures. As I said, I can find that the site includes remains of 4 temples of the goddess Isha, the Zagat and Temple Tower. As I said, okay, now we got much further. The palace, okay, that we also wrote. So, now we can see here. Go back. Now the temples of Mari, of the goddess Ishtar. Now just to think, it's a dead god, it's not really a god. What they did to my, and we laugh about it, but for them it was serious. You know, the temples they made go and pray there, and I can't believe that they did it, but that happened. That is what happened. That is all ruins of where they dug up and everything about the temples. That they can prove it was there. Okay? Ishtar, the temple of Mari, that is Ishtar at the temple. That is Zagrat before and after excavation. Now, if you see closer, that is before this is when they started with excavating it. And this is after they got it and they sort of fix it. That is what it looked like. That is exactly what it looked like. The large palace found in Mari with the 300 rooms. That is the palace parts. Now we look at Nuzi. This palace is in modern Iraq. As you see, everything is there on top of the one area. This palace in the modern Iraq. Here they found thousands of clay tablets written when Mitanni kingdom in the 15th century before Christ, before they controlled the area. These tablets were written in Old Babylonian cuneiform script by Huram scribes. Reflects customs and laws in northern Mesopotamia, which are similar to many of those in the Hebrew patriarchs. Genesis 16 verse 27, or Genesis 16, 27, 29 to 30. You can read about it there.
Okay.
The patriarchs lived in the region of Haran in the middle Euphrates Valley. The sending of a servant back to Haran to choose a wife for Isaac and the journey of Japheth to that region indicate that contact was maintained for some time by the patriarchs with their original homes. So there was contact. The Nuzi records have a significant bearing of the patriarchal narratives of the Bible. So there's quite, we know, okay, that there was, as we would say today, Jews. Okay, as we will mention there, but beliefs in Christ. They were there. From Isaac, so it's quite a long time. The wife of Isaac, so it's in the Old Testament. This gives better understanding of Genesis 31. That's quite interesting, verse 19. And Genesis 29, verse 24 and 29. Namely, now, that is quite interesting. We always wonder, why did Rachel took this house gods? And why was Abram's sister, a wife called his sister? Was it things that they wanted to shy? No, it's the culture. Look at this. Rachel taking of the house gods of her father Laban. Nazi text has revealed that property could pass from the father to his daughter's husband if the house god has been handed over to the son-in-law as a token to the arrangement had proper sanctions. So, there was a reason why she took it. It wasn't just to get the gods, to have the gods because she got to pray to the gods. No. there was an arrangement, there was a token that the arrangement has proper sanctions. Then get the gods. Okay, so that's the reason. Abram's introducing Sarah as a sister. Why? What happened there? And the presentation of the slave girl to the new brides, Leah and Rachel, is better understood because of the similar Hurrian customs. Now they know why. What happened there? In a Iranian society, the bonds of marriage were most solemn when the wife had legally the simultaneously status of the sister. So we have to call the sister also. The terms for sister and wife were interchangeable in official use. So, like me, I'm the wife of my husband, but I'm also his sister.
Okay.
But it's the same thing. So it was interchangeably used for the same thing as his wife. According to Nutsi documents, an upper-class wife who bore her husband no sons was suspected to furnish him with a concubine. That is where Abram concubine, remember?
Yeah.
She didn't get so, there was a concubine. That was custom. And the wife was entitled to treat the concubine's offspring as her own. But now we know what happened there with Abram and the whole story there. Now you can understand that was their culture.
Yeah.
And fits in now what happened. Now the question is not there that, okay, he lied because he said it's his sister. No, he didn't lie. That was a culture to say his sister and his wife is the same, interchangeably used. Okay, so it's not a lie, that was their custom. In Syria, with the excavation of the Mount of Ras Shamra, they uncovered tables written in the previous cuneiform writing. A complete library with hundreds of tablets was uncovered. On one side of the library was a temple built for Baal, and on the other one for Dagon. So the discovery of small golden amulets in the shape of naked women revealed that the fertility cult was popular. Okay, a small statue of the sitting fertility goddess was found and may have represented Anat, the consort of Baal. On a great stone stela of Baal, the god is shown with ox horns on his helmet, a club in his right hand, and a stylized thunderbolt ending in a spear in his left hand. So it's quite interesting to see how many gods they had. There. Okay, now there's the goddess of Anat, stella found by the Baal in Syria. There's the El god and the Mot god. Now, if you just think of how many gods we just in this short while mentioned, then you must know how many. This culture, that there's a lot of gods. I tell you, I'm so glad we got the Almighty God, Almighty God, the one God, Almighty God. The Acharit Mount of 5 layers shows that 5 cities occupied the site during the period of 5000 to 1200 before Christ. So, now they can see, okay, there were so many people there. This one was out and the next one, and this one is out and the next one came in. The last city which stood during the time of the Israelites were in Egypt, benefited greatly from an alliance with Egypt. The Acharat text provides means of understanding certain Old Testament words as well as Hebrew grammar. They speak in El, the leading deity of the Acharat, Python. So, going on in Palestine. Gezer. We go on in Palestine, Gezer. The people who lived here were cave dwellers. Now that's interesting.
Yeah.
The Semitic people captured in about 2500 before Christ. The Semitic occupation has been divided into 4 periods. Now it's already, you will see a lot of it, namely the 2500 1500 to 1800 before Christ, and then again from 1800 to 1350 before Christ, and again 1300 to the establishment of the Hebrew kingdom about 1000 before Christ, and from the beginning of the Hebrew kingdom to its end in 587 before Christ. Only then the Hebrews were established. It's quite interesting to know now, okay, here is something coming now about the Hebrews. In Giza they found a tunnel which has been cut through solid rock to a spring in a cave 94 feet below the surface of the rock. Now just think by yourself, in today's life they even struggle to get it, we're using machines. So I don't know how long they took to do that. The tunnel supplied water from the city in case of siege. It seems to have been dug about 1800 before Christ. The city was surrounded completely by walls with watchtowers built on them. The Egyptian pharaoh presented Giza to his daughter, who became the wife of Solomon. That we read about 1 Kings 9 verse 16. And they found it. So it's quite interesting. There you can see, going a bit down, bring it a bit up. There you can see where they're going in, and this is where the water was flowing. Okay. So yeah, a lot of work. Really a lot of work. Jerusalem. Now we come more to the places we want to know. Jerusalem, the modern city of Jerusalem is standing on top of the ancient Jerusalem. So it didn't shift.
Okay.
If they could pick up all today's stuff, they will found the city underneath. And as we know, that is, they pick up a lot of stuff, and they dug up quite a lot of stuff there already. The temple area is covered by the great dome of the rock and cannot be touched. But they went underneath the rock.
Okay.
And they got their tunnels. There's tunnels underneath the rock. If you go into Google and you ask, just Google it, underneath, they found tunnels and everything there, underneath the rock. On discovery was the inscription of the Siloam tunnel, which was constructed in the 8th century by King Hezekiah, about 715 to 687 before Christ. The king recognized the threat to the Jerusalem water supply as the Assyrian army of Sennacherib approached in 701 before Christ. Okay? He built the tunnel or conduit to carry water from the spring of Gibeon to the pool of Siloam. And we know about the Siloam even in the New Testament.
Yeah.
And they also got it now, they got the pool, everything now, also now, they found it. They found it. Yeah. Two groups of workmen started at the opposite ends, and by use of picks executive 583 yards on a zigzag course to connect 0.633 yards apart. Oh, yeah, it's bad. The inscription on the rock wall of the tunnel tells of their remarkable feat. It is one of the oldest inscriptions in Hebrew. So we know the Hebrews were there.
Yeah.
The Jews were there. Okay? So, to who the land belongs, Israel belongs to the Jews, to the Hebrew-speaking people. It's their land. The proof is there. In today's life. Jericho. Evacuations have uncovered evidence of the building, probably a temple dated early in 4500 before Christ. Yeah, I can't think by myself that this is all stone that they cut out, and it's a lot of work. It's just a lot of work. Statues probably of gods in groups of 3 were found. Father, mother and child. Okay, that was the statues that they found there. Lachish. Materials excavated from the indicated that Joshua took it about 1220 before Christ. Later, Solomon made it into one of the Syrian cities. Lachish was besieged during Sennacherib's advance towards Jerusalem in 701 before Christ. The Assyrian record on the siege of Lachish and related incidents has been found on Nineveh Palace walls reliefs. The evidence of Sennacherib's siege of the Judean city has been unearthed. Lachish was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in 598 before Christ and again in 587 before Christ. Okay, so there we see again. Okay, and destroyed came up, destroyed. So yeah. This finding of Lachish are Lachish letters on 21 pieces of red buff poetry or ostraka. The letters were written in Ashaya. How would you say that name? The letters were written by Ashaya, subordinate officials in the outpost of Lachish, to his superior Yahush in the city. The letters reflect the uneasy political and military situation in Judah at the time of Nebuchadnezzar invasions. That reflects the epistolary style in Judah at the time of Jeremiah. These letters are the only body of documents in classical Hebrew prose yet found. So they don't have any other documents they got there. The city is established about 3,500 before Christ. The Israelites' conquest of it is recorded in Joshua 12, verse 21. They say the Megiddo and her towns were assigned to Manasseh in Joshua 17, verse 11. Come again into the Bible. Solomon rebuilt it into an important chariot city in 1 Kings 9, verse 15 and 1 Kings 10, verse 26 to 29. So you can get it there also. Some 20 successive layers of city ruins appear on the site. There is a Astarte temple dated in the 7th century before Christ, indicating Israel had turned to idols. Hezekiah and Joshua protested this apostasy. Evacuation of the layers of ruins from the time of Solomon reveals that perhaps 500 horses were stabled in one city. So there you can see all this ugly stuff that went on. There was Impel found in Megiddo. That is the Megiddo, that is the place. And that is the Astarte goddess. Yeah. Samaria. This city was inhabited as early as 300, it must be 3,000. King Omri, 1 Kings 16 verse 24, moved his capital from Tirzah to Samaria about 875 before Christ. His son Ahab is known for the ivory palace which he built in Samaria in 1 Kings 22 verse 39. What they mean by the ivory, there was a lot of ivory inside the palace. It was very nicely done. Under Alab, Balaam became a prominent element in the life of the people. In the storeroom near the palace, they found about 200 plates of ivory pieces. Most of the ivory pieces appear to have been affixed to the paneling the room. About 70 pieces of broken pottery were inscribed in the old Hebrew script. Now this is some of the ivory stuff that they found. It was some of the stuff that they found there. Okay. Then Karbet Quram, the scrolls of Quram community, was found in 1947. Are discovered in detail, as discussed in detail in New Testament background. The majority of writings that were discovered there dated 130 before Christ to 70 AD. We only doing New Testament background next year.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Now chapter 2. Let me see what is the time. Okay, we can go on a little bit. Stop. See how far we can get. Right. Now we go over to chapter 2. The time before Abram. When we look at how old the earth is, how you're going to work it out, boys, and what they did. Not this million years that all the scientists are talking about. That is taking it really very bad. They got very different ideas, and we will see their ideas also of the earth. But we know what happened. So how do we work out the time? You work backwards creation. You work backwards toward creation using the years given by the generation of persons in Genesis 1 to 11. So, with other words, you start this automatically. Let's say, for instance, say, for example, Adam.
Yeah.
Adam was born in the beginning. He got, say, I don't know how he got it, but say he got, his age was 1,000. Automatically there is 1,000 years later, is it?
Yeah.
So from there to the next one is his children, you can work it out. That is what they did. Focus on the ages of the genealogical list of Genesis 5 and 11. From these calculations, a date of 4,000 before Christ was established from Adam. A day is interpreted in Genesis 1 to a literally meaning 24-hour day because it was evening and it was morning. Yeah. Evening and it was morning the first day. This first day was only created 5 days before Adam was created. So the Archbishop Asher derived to the date of 4004 because of that 4 days.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright.
And that's where you got the 4004. So if we look at the timeline and you get it like this, you can see they start by 4004, then it was the flood, more or less 2050 before Christ, then it was Babel, 2175 before Christ, Abram, 2000, close to Moses and his law, 1500, David, 1000, Babylonian Nebuchadnezzar was 606, and it was Christ. And there we go further. Okay, that is how they work it out. So they got the dates more or less, how old the people was and what happened. Okay. The creation narrative. The creation narrative was not given for a full explanation of the chronological happening, as I said earlier, but to give it a summary fashion using the concepts of his day and the origin as the background to the primary emphasis of God in the creation. He is the creator. So that is what, as I said right at the beginning, the whole thing of the creation wasn't about to give you details, but to give God's working in the creation. Who He is and where He stands. Therefore, for biblical students, we are focused on the understanding of the invisible God who created the visible world. The creation narrative is God's self-disclosure or divine revelation, which are limited ones are not infallible in an interpretation of a biblical message. We cannot think God was and will be forever because our minds is made, you get born and you die. There's a beginning and there's an end in our life. That is why it's for us so difficult to think God was always and He will be always. And if we are with Him at the end, we will be with Him always. Okay? So He gave us the interpretation of a biblical message and what happened. A historical outline is difficult for a period before history was recorded. Written records have been traced in the Sumerian culture. They date back more than 1,000 years before Abraham. As a long time they got they found it. The records. The history before Abraham is based largely on material records of pottery types, instruments of cooking, farming and hunting, as well as ruins of buildings. That is proven. It's there. They found it. The account of creation. Hebrew writing focus on God, the eternal creator. Now we know that the Hebrews originally is the Jews that was with God always, that was close to God. Right? So they did not require rational proof of the existence of the invisible God, but emphasis was placed on acceptance by the transcendent and creator and redeemer. That is where the focus was.
Yeah.
Their thought started with God rather than with man. That is today still the same. When you go to God, it is not about us. It's about God. Everything is going about God. We worship our God. It's not about us, it's about God. And how that invisible God is known by revelation. He revealed Him through the Bible, who He is and what He is. And it's a God of love. Okay? Because God loved the world so much, He gave His only Son
Yeah.
for us. God is superior to material existence and therefore has power over it. God's Spirit in His power, which moves upon the face of the waters in the stage of creation, when the earth was without form and void. Now, if you think about it, now they say God's Spirit wasn't in the Old Testament, wasn't in the Old Testament. When they created, the Spirit was over the waters. So it was already there, or not it, the Holy Spirit was already there. It's not only in the New Testament, okay? He was there, right in the beginning.
From the beginning.
Right in the beginning, He was there. And darkness upon the face of the deep, Genesis 1 verse 2. The emphasis in Genesis 1 was man's position in relation to other areas of material existence, since he moved forward to a climax with the creation of man on the sixth day. We were supposed to be these ones in His creation. And now we mess up His creation. The instruction was we must look after the creation. What are we doing? We're messing it up. We're messing it up. And because of the fall of sin. Man, as a crown of creation, was given dominion over plants and animals created before him. The order establishes God as the supreme creator and man as God's highest creator. But we are still under God, who ruled over the rest of creation and material existence at the work of the supreme being. That is what we're supposed to do. Very important. Theologians begin with God and sees the material existence in the light of the divine creator. So God is above it. Okay? The order establishes man's responsibility to his creator and his dependence upon him. Since God existed in the beginning, the author did not attempt to put a time limit on existence, but that time has a beginning in time, and different stages of existence had a historical beginning. There's different stages through all the time we went through. Okay, everything's not the same all the time. It changed. And we are still changing. Greek gods was the creation of human minds. So the Greek gods, what we spoke about just now, and all the other pagan gods, were the human mind that created them. The scientist begins with created matter and sees the creator in the light of the material. With other words, a scientist will look at say a stone found with something on. They look at that and then they go back. They don't look at God first that created the stone. You understand what I'm saying? They look at the stone, the physical thing first, and then they go back. We work from God. So then we can understand the fact that God can speak a word and He can create. Not like a scientist that want to prove it otherwise. So, Genesis 2 has a different purpose of emphasis. Because the one is creation, there's a little bit of creation again in Genesis 2. The author describing man's relation to his creator. Yahweh formed man's body of the dust of the ground. Breathed life into his nostrils in Genesis 2 verse 7. Placed him in a specifically prepared garden, 2 verse 8 to 15. Give him specific commands, 2 verse 16 to 17. Provide for his special needs, 2 18 to 24. And entered into intimate fellowship with him, 3 verse 8. God gave everything for us what we needed. He gave everything. What we did with it is not His fault. Okay? Man is given the capacity to relate to his Creator, but as creature, he is subject to Him. We can relate to Him, but we are subjective to Him. Okay? Geological accounts of the earth. Okay, there you can go and read through the discussions there about science and arguments of creation. That is not for me interested. I'm going to give you just the two thoughts that they've got there also, but I'm really not going to go into them. Further, a few years ago, the science age of the science people aged the Earth about 4.5 billion years old. Two known theories that have just listened, their theories, how the Earth started. One theory suggests that the outer part of the molten Earth cooled and solidified. During its long history, various materials with higher melting points crystallized as temperatures cooled and a solid crust was formed. That is what they believe. This is the one view. Another theory suggests that the Earth was formed by accumulations of small bodies which were in a cool, solid state. That was the two theories. And then you can read again all their stories and so the archaeological discoveries of this thing and so on, their stories. But I think that is the important part that you must remember. They got different theories. That's really not right. The geographical features of Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia has been called the cradle of civilization. The name means between the rivers, as we said already. The country lies between the Sahara Arabian desert and the west and the foothills of Zagros mountains on the east. It extends from the Tigris mountains on the north to the Persian Gulf on the south. The country follows the two rivers, the Euphrates, which means that makes faithful, and Tigris, which means arrow. The Euphrates originates in the northern foothills of Armenian Taurus range and cuts a winding course from 1,780 miles to the headwaters of the Persian Gulf. The Tigris originates in the southern foothills of the Armenian Taurus and follows the straight course of 1,060 miles before joining the Euphrates in centering the Persian Gulf. I just want to see, there we go. There you can see where it's the Euphrates. There's the Euphrates, it's going right up there. And there's the Tigris, and they're coming into the Persian Gulf. Okay. The soil of the territory. The soil of the territory, which is approximately 600 miles long and 300 miles wide, is relatively fertile. The area receives an average of only 10 inches of rainfall per year, and therefore the settlers depend on the two rivers for water. It's in between them. And now, isn't the Euphrates now that's drying up? Yeah. The Sumerian developed on elaborate system of canals for irrigation purposes. The Sumerian culture, the first people who were important to the development of the civilization were the Sumerians. They come from the Caucasus region to the north before the 4th millennium. Now, okay, we can go in other different places and the regions and all of it is there. That's just to show. Whereas, now if you look at that, okay, I'm going to give you the next chart there. That is more or less that area on the world map.
Okay.
Okay, that all of it's lying more or less there. Okay. Okay, so the Sumerians were the forerunners of the Babylonian civilization. What was probably the first high civilization in the history of mankind, and lived in the great urban centers such as Eridu, Ur, Larsha, Lagash, Nippur, and Kish. The culture developed in a high level of political power and economic wealth. Ur is important because this is associated with Abram. The early rules of Sumer whose deeds are recorded in Kings of Kish about 300 before Christ by the name of Itana. Irish divination was channeled by the city-state of Kish a ruler of Athena dynasty, was the founder of Shamersheim, a temple to the Sumerian air god Anil, in the city of Nippur. Daar we get the exactly thing for this exactly thing again. Same picture again.
Yeah.
Later king Meshkar-Hashir founded a dynasty at the city of Erech in Genesis 10 verse 10 and controlled an area which extended from the sea, possibly the Mediterranean, to Zaphros mountains. The city-state of Ur, the biblical Ur of the Chaldees, wrestled rule from Erech and dominated Sumer as a whole. Its king, Masonopada, established a dynasty of capable rulers. The uncovering of the royal cemetery at Ur has yielded Lemurians weapons, tools, vessels, ornaments fashioned out of gold, silver, and semi-precious stones. Again, we come again here, I mention again. The city-state of Erech again gained dominance over Sumer under the rule of Gilgamesh. Okay, back again. The Sumerians believed that the king was the deputy of the patron deity of the city-state. Kingship was a matter of a divine election. The gods could withdraw privilege of kingship or could bestow blessings at any time. The major gods were the four creatures, the major gods that they believe in was An, it was the sky, that was the divine force of heaven. The Kai, the earth. Enel was air, that manifested by wind and storms. Enki, water, the rain which fertilized the ground. Then they also had the biblical Tammuz. They called it Dumuzi. At the earlier period, the woman of Jerusalem was still mourning his death in the days of the prophet of Ezekiel. You see it in Ezekiel 8 verse 14. There were over 500 gods in the ancient Sumerian pantheon.